Wait, so how many of us are there?
Hey everybody, there's a whole bunch of Spider-Man that just dropped, so a bunch of you have been requesting a video for the Spider-Verse stuff as well as Homecoming 2, because it sounds like we might be getting Black Cat in the Homecoming sequel. Even though it's not going to be called Homecoming 2, they'll have some different title for it, but they haven't revealed that yet, maybe because it's kind of spoilery for what's going on during Infinity War. But if you are finding me for the first time, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos, and there is a new round of that Infinity Gauntlet giveaway. But if you guys didn't know, Liev Schreiber was playing the villain of the Spider-Verse movie. That's the animated one that we're going to be watching later this December. There is a lot of Spider-Man related stuff happening in the next 18 months or so. So we have a Homecoming sequel, we also have the Venom movie, and we have the animated Spider-Verse movie. So everybody's seen the Spider-Verse trailer. It very clearly looks like they're doing a version of Miles Morales' origin story in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, but a lot of you correctly guess why would they title it Into the Spider-Verse, as in Spider-Man Multiverse, without actually doing some of that stuff from the comics, like they even put it into the trailer. How many of us are there? But you get the idea. They're teasing the idea of an alternate universe where there are just many different people who are part of the Spider family. But here, when we get to the villain part of this, it'll make sense. On the second level, they're also teasing more of a multiverse storyline, which gets into Spider-Verse from the comics. But I think what's going on is they're like dipping their toe in the multiverse pool before they cannonball in.
I've been chasing that pointy-eared freak through alternate worlds. Sound weird? Gets weirder. I ran into 6 other versions of myself. Some even knew my secret identity. Awkward.
So even though they're doing Spider-Verse from the comics, they're not going to be throwing all that stuff at you, because if you read that storyline, it actually wasn't the greatest. Like, they just spammed different Spider-Man all over it, and the payoff wasn't quite as great. There were a lot of conspiracy theories about why Marvel did a story like that, because it was at a time when they still didn't have access to the Spider-Man character, and there's all these conspiracy theories about how Marvel tries to dilute brands that it doesn't have access to in the films. Like, you may have heard the crackpot theories about how Marvel took all their Fantastic Four characters out of Marvel Comics just because they couldn't get access to them in the movies. But obviously that's all a moot point now because Disney's buying Fox, they have them back. But for a while it seemed like Marvel Comics was doing that with their Spider-Man brand. They were just diluting it across so many different titles, and it was while as Andrew Garfield stuff was going on. But the main villain of that storyline was Morlun. They originally announced that Liev Schreiber was going to be the villain of the Spider-Verse movie, but they didn't say who he was playing. People have supposedly been saying that he's been confirmed as Morlun. I've had trouble verifying that, but it would make more sense that they would call the movie Into the Spider-Verse if they were using a Spider-Verse villain from the comics. So that doesn't mean that they're not doing Norman Osborn or Ultimate Green Goblin or any of the other Ultimate versions of the characters, because I think first and foremost, they're just teasing the idea of Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man from the comics, before they go crazy with Multiverse Spider-Man and a bunch of different versions of the character. And I think even when they do that, they'll still whittle it down to a couple different versions of Spider-Man. But if they're going to do the Miles Morales origin story, they do actually have to do a version of Peter Parker to explain why he put the mask on. But getting back to the Morlun of it all, if you're not familiar with who his character is, he's this supernatural being that was created for the express purpose of hunting down all the people who possessed what they would call spider totems. So that gets into some really crazy mythology about the Spider-Man character. Like, he gets his powers from a spider bite. The spider had been genetically modified. But then later in the comics, they turned it into more of a Black Panther situation where, like, Black Panther gets a lot of his power from the Panther totem, also through the heart-shaped herb. So it's a combination of science and mythology. They did the same thing with all the different versions of Spider-Man for a little while, and the movies obviously haven't addressed this, which is why I think that this is going to be an animated universe thing only. But Morlun was this supernatural being that was created to hunt down all of them across the multiverse and take back the power from their totems. So he became this main antagonist for the Spider-Man multiverse. So it makes sense that he would be the villain for a Spider-Verse movie. But it really would be like jumping over Darth Vader to get to the Emperor. So they are going there very fast. I don't know how they're going to use him during the movie or what they're going to tease in terms of other versions of Spider-Man from other worlds. But I think part of the idea is that they're hoping to turn him into sort of like an animated version of Thanos, where they can spin out a franchise from these animated Spider-Man films, and they can do whatever they want, and it doesn't have to cross over with the live-action films. It doesn't have to get super confusing in that way, so they can get as crazy as they want. because it's animation and there aren't any limitations like you would have with live action filmmaking in terms of budget or big action set pieces, or even doing really crazy stories with a billion different versions of the character. Like, imagine how weird it would be if 5 different versions of Spider-Man popped up during Infinity War. Maybe they'll have some joke about that too, because we are getting into the multiverse of the live action movies.
I have been falling for 30 minutes!
Just let me know in the comments, what do you think about the idea of Morlun being the big bad of the Spider-Man multiverse in these animated movies? And getting into Black Cat stuff, so there's a lot of people that have been reporting that they're actually looking for someone that sounds exactly like the Black Cat to show up during the Homecoming sequel. This is me just reading from the press releases. The pitch says, Peter Parker will cross paths with a mysterious European young lady that will likely lead him into danger. Which is basically like they're doing big classic characters. Black Cat is one of those types of people, where she's kind of bad, but she's kind of good. Basically the Catwoman of Spider-Man comics.
Hey, crime spree! Was hoping you'd swing this way again. I think like a thief. A boat full of overdressed fat cats is a can't-miss proposition. Wait. Ooh. Now Waters is wearing the Stuyvesant tiger. I want it.
Still no idea about how old the character would be, if it'd be an older version of Black Cat, like she'd be in her 20s or 30s, because Peter is still only going to be about 17 when Homecoming 2 picks up, because the timeline is going to get a little weird between the next couple of Avengers films and the Homecoming sequel, but it gets a little bit easier to track when you just remember what Kevin Feige said about the Spider-Man movies they're doing.
This is sophomore year, is the next one junior year, is the next one senior year? Is there a summer break between each of those? I don't know what. But it was sort of how do we do a journey for Peter, you know, not dissimilar for what the students of Hogwarts would go through each of their years, which was one of the early ideas we had for the movies.
They're going to have him do the Harry Potter thing where they just see him in a different school year each year. So he was a sophomore during Homecoming. That means the next Spider-Man movie, he'll be a junior. Then the third movie, he'll be a senior, he'll graduate, and who knows what'll happen after that. The Sony sharing arrangement with Marvel for the character only extends through the Homecoming sequel. After that, they'll have to sign a new deal and just decide what they want to do with the character for the next 10 years. But I mean, come on, spoiler alert, of course they're going to re-sign that sharing arrangement. Sony has made so much more money because of what Marvel has done with the character, there's no way they're going to go back on that. They would lose access to all those A-list Avengers that they would put in those Spider-Man movies. Marvel would just circle the wagons, they'd have the X-Men characters, and everybody would just forget about Sony as a company. They would just die on the vine. So no way they're going to cut Spider-Man out of that. They're probably going to hype him up even more as a Phase 4 character, like the new Iron Man-esque type character of Phase 4. We actually almost got to see a version of Black Cat during the Andrew Garfield movies, but they never quite got to that point. During Amazing Spider-Man 2, Felicity Jones from Rogue One played a version of Felicia Hardy.
You were his assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's your name?
Felicia.
Felicia. From now on, everybody at this table works for Felicia. Because Felicia works for me.
Didn't really do anything with that character. If you remember, they actually had a version of Mary Jane, played by Shailene Woodley, that they cut out of that film too. There were just so many characters they stuffed into that. But we did technically have a version of Black Cat in the Spider-Man movies. Big question though, who do you want them to do for Black Cat in the Spider-Man Marvel movies, and how old do you want the character to be? Do you want her to be about Peter's age, or do you want her to be a little bit older? Really big news is that we got the Super Bowl coming next week. There'll probably be some Marvel stuff dropping between Infinity War and Black Panther. I'll announce the giveaway winner when I post my next Marvel video, which should be in the next couple of days, but leave all your requests in the comments below. Click here for brand new Black Panther and Avengers, and click here for brand new Flash. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.